I'm going to call to order the regular meeting of the Clean Energy Alliance for June 27th, 2024. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Board Member Becker,
Present.
Board Member Musgrove,
Present.
Board Member Bhat Patel,
Here.
Alternate Board Member Joyce,
Present.
Chair Druker, noting Board Member Garcia and Vice Chair Melendez are absent.
Katie just texted me that she's running a few minutes late, so she'll be here soon. And my understanding is Christian Garcia is going to be joining us via Zoom at about 2:30. He's got childcare duties. Is that correct? You want to add anything to that, Johanna?
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So we've had the roll call. Eric, will you lead us in the pledge?
Ready? Begin.
Okay, next is any board comments or announcements? Okay, seeing none, we go on to public comment. This is when members of the public can comment on any issue that's not on the agenda. And seeing that we have this full packed house, Kaylin, are there any members of the public that wanted to speak to us?
We do not have any public speakers.
Okay, very good. So next we go on to the approval of minutes for the special meeting held May 30th, 2024. Are there any changes or is there a motion to accept the minutes?
Move to accept.
A second.
Okay, very good. Kaylin, will you please call the roll?
Board Member Becker, Board Member Musgrove,
Aye.
Board Member Bhat Patel,
Aye.
Alternate Board Member Joyce,
Aye.
Chair Druker.
Yes. Next, we go on to consent calendar. Kaylin, will you read the items on the consent calendar, the titles?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Item 1, Clean Energy Alliance Treasurer's Report for April 2024. Item number 2, consideration of resolution number 2024-008, approving a professional services agreement with Bayshore Consulting Group. And for the record, Vice Chair Melendez arrived at 2:03 p.m.
Thank you. It's very good. Are there any items that anybody would like to remove from the consent calendar? Are there any items that the public has asked to comment on the consent calendar?
We do not have any speakers on the consent calendar.
Okay, is there any items that anybody would like to add to the consent calendar? Seeing none, please, can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Kaylin, please call the roll.
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Board Member Musgrove, Board Member Bhat Patel, Alternate Board Member Joyce,
Aye.
Vice Chair Melendez,
Aye.
Chair Druker.
Yes. Okay, Greg, you're up.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. This is the CEO report for this June meeting. We'll cover very briefly the presence at community events, as well as some upcoming events, the enrollment statistics for the cities of Oceanside and Vista, and an update on our Solar Plus program. Next slide. I've provided this we have provided this in all of the updates recently, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but I did want to highlight that at the request of Mayor Sanchez of the City of Oceanside, I made a presentation to their council last night at their meeting in this council chamber to provide an update to their residents regarding rates and our proposed budget rate proposal for this next fiscal year. I will say it was a very full house. I will say that they weren't there to see me, but it was a very full house. It was the last meeting before their summer recess, and although I know I don't have to mention this, I thought it was exciting that the Oceanside High School girls softball team was recognized for winning CIF, their region. So I thought that was pretty cool. It's always an honor to hear those things about our communities. These are some of the events that are coming up. On July 11th, we'll be at the Farm Bureau. On July 17th, we'll be making a presentation to the Escondido City Council. And on August 1st, we'll be with the Oceanside Chamber of Commerce. I also have been asked, or we have been asked, to make a similar presentation to the Solana Beach City Council in September. So this is the statistics for the cities of Oceanside. They haven't changed too much. We still have a really high participation rate when you look at both cities combined of 96.5%. Real little movement over the last couple weeks and the last month. There tends to be a slight uptick in opt-outs when we send our final notices, which did go out in the beginning of this month. And this is the end of our post-enrollment notification process and the 60 days following launch, during which customers can opt out without having to go either to transitional bundled rate or waiting to go back. This just shows how our participation in each of our products are for the customers. As you can see, we're now at full enrollment. Full enrollment with the caveat that we have yet to contact all our net energy metering, our solar customers, as they will be contacted for their opt-out rights at their annual true-up. But as you can see there's a difference from May to June of approximately 65 other opt-outs and still at a strong 240 to 244,000 customer accounts. Brief update on our Solar Plus. We still are at about 11 enrolled contracts. You can see the breakdown there by cities. And we are just engaged in our more aggressive outreach. So we're via social media and other outreach efforts. We are trying to get the word out that this program is online and available. Next slide. And part of which is during discussions, both with customers as well as at our community advisory committee meeting, there was a concern raised that the program was not allowing residents with tile roofs, as an example, to be part of the program. And while that is potentially true with one single contractor, we are outreaching to other contractors in the area that will be able to be part of the program that do not have that restriction. I think that's an important effort for us to get that expanded to roof materials that might not otherwise be amenable to at least the one contractor we had to initiate the program. So that's an effort that's ongoing. And we are also getting Tesla to provide some additional consultation and sales resources to the program as well. So that concludes the update on the CEO report.
Very good. Are there questions for Greg? Thank you very much, Greg. Great report. Good news about the enrollments, et cetera, that we're having in Vista and Oceanside. So with that, we're going on to our public hearing, which is consideration of Resolution 24-009, approving the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget and setting rates for Clean Energy Alliance effective November 1st, 2024. So Greg, I assume you and Andy are up, right?
Yes, sir. Chair Drucker and members of the board, this is the public hearing to consider the fiscal year 24-25 budget and rate setting for the next year as well and following years. I'm going to give an overview of the rate setting procedure and the discussion that took place at the last board meeting, and then Andy Stern will provide a brief update on the 2024-2025 budget. So as background, you can see here that we presented this fiscal year 2024 2025 draft budget at the last meeting. The board considered 3 rate change options. The first of which was a 10% increase in July of this year and a 10% increase in July of next year. The second, 20% effective November 1st of this year, which would carry through to the summer. And the third, a bifurcated option wherein the winter rate would be slightly higher than the summer rate to create a smoothing effect of the transition from summer to winter rates and from winter to summer rates, so as not to have as dramatic an increase in going into the summer rates and as dramatic a decrease going into the winter rates rather. You can see the resulting overall bill impacts, and I want to make clear that that's the total bill increase, which I'll highlight soon. Option 1 would be a 6% increase overall bill of electricity bill, including delivery, 5.7% in option 2 and 5.4% in option 3. Next slide. During the last meeting, the board selected option 3 as the preferred option, but also provided direction to staff to investigate or study another option that might create more of an even dramatic smoothing of the rates and transition from summer to winter and back from summer to winter and from winter to summer. So Andy Stern did take a look at a couple options, but landed on a 40% winter increase and 10% summer increase, which does meet all the objectives of our rate setting policies, as well as our covenants with JP Morgan, and we'll highlight that option, which we're calling option 4. And to remind everyone again of our rate setting priorities, of course, the JP Morgan covenants are front and center of our obligation to cover our costs, set rates to cover our costs, as well as reserves to meet our debt service coverage ratio and our days liquidity on hand requirements, to address our cash flow needs, to meet our climate action plan goals, provide rate stability. And I will remind you here again that the options that are being considered would not change rates until November of this year, pushing us close to almost 2 years without a rate change. And then meet the financial reserve policy, as well as providing financial stability sufficient at some point to receive a credit rating, and of course, being rate competitive to SDG&E. This shows you the comparison of option 3, which was preferred by the board at the last meeting, and option 4. As you can see there at the top line, you have the current rates. That is an all-in bill. So that's electricity charges for SDG&E delivery and CEA generation. So looking at option 3, really just getting to the bottom line, averaging out over the course of the year with 7 months of winter rates and 5 months of summer rates, you have a 5.4% average increase on the year. And then looking at option 4, that actually drops down to 5.2%, most notably because the higher rate of the summer rates drops to 10% in option 4. It was also asked at following the last board meeting, a couple board members asked for information about total energy costs. So understanding that electricity is just one part of an energy bill, and that many customers on their SDG&E bill also have their gas charges. So what we did here is we sought input from SDG&E on average gas prices or gas payments for an average residential customer, both in the summer and the winter. I would note, just as a matter of interest, that summer rates and winter rates for gas charges are 6 months of the year for each, winter and summer, not the 7 and 5 like electricity. But as you can see here, that the concern was expressed that in the winter, although we might be looking at a higher rate increase on the electricity side, that's also the time during which gas usage goes up and the costs of gas go up for customers. So the concern was expressed that we wanted to be careful not to create an overwhelmingly disparate burden on the winter rates overall versus the summer. As you can see here in the comparisons, if you look at options 3 and 4, you're looking at about a $10 increase in option 3 on your average bill, all in gas and electricity, and about a $9 increase, $9.50 on option 4. The benefit of option 4 in this scenario is that, again, because you're having more winter gas usage, less winter gas usage in the summer, where there's a commensurate less of an increase on the electricity, there's actually a benefit of increase at 3.9% as opposed to 4.3% for option 3. So again, the option 4 was evaluated, and these are the numbers that we came up with. Next slide. This just shows the different vintages and the impact. This is going back, this is just on the generation side. Keep that in mind. This is not the entire bill. And it shows the different vintages. Again, we've discussed a little bit, both individually in briefings and collectively, that Escondido and San Marcos vintage year 2022 has a slightly higher PCIA. I will note that each of the vintages have gone through this since joining our CEA. Solana Beach has seen an increase as high as what you're looking at there in their PCIA. It has come down dramatically since then. And the ERA forecast that SDG&E just put forward for their rates for next year and PCIA rates shows that Escondido and San Marcos, at least in the first filing, would come down by about 19%. And that over the next 2 years, it would come down even further so that the PCIA would level off and all vintages would roughly be in the same ballpark. But as you can see there, we're not there yet. And I also would mention that, excuse me, in the ERA filing, Oceanside and Vista also see a decrease next year in their PCIA should that come to fruition. But I always caution that there's a long way between the initial filing of ERA and December 31st, which is when SDG&E will finalize its rates. So that concludes the portion of the presentation on the rates, and I'll turn it over to Andy for the fiscal 24-25 budget.
Thank you. Sure. So this is just a little, the first 2 slides are repeats of last month, but just to set the context that we provided the board, the draft budget last month. Those budget priorities are largely the same as the rate setting priorities, the financial stability, regulatory compliance requirements, which are around energy purchases, JP Morgan line of credit covenants, and climate action plan goals. Next slide, please. There are many, many assumptions that go into the budget, but the 4 key ones or most significant ones are power supply costs are based on actual executed contracts that we already have in place as they extend through this year, and forward price curves, which are based upon external resources projecting the costs of what's going to happen to energy costs and how they impact us. In addition, we've added in a 10%, 5% power supply cost contingency that adds up to about $15 million each year. But in this year, we're only approving 1 year, but roughly $15 to $17 million annually in terms of the long-term forecast. Consulting services are based upon currently approved contracts. And we mentioned this last time too, that we have staff costs. We have 6 employees today with a modest increase for salary increases, and then in future years for some hiring, although those would be approved by the board. There's not any current specific plans for hiring any additional staff this coming year. And then in this proposed budget, I've mentioned this last time as well, we have an initial program funding plug of $600,000 as we start to plan out what are we going to do and what the board would like to do from a program funding standpoint. $600,000 is a modest amount and would allow us to initiate some programs. And then over the next 5 years, we have assumed that budget line item or that line item grows, although the board is only approving a current year budget at this point. Next slide, please. This is a little bit small, but there's 2 columns, an option A and an option B, and those align with the 2 rate setting alternatives the board is considering. So option A aligns with the 30% and 15% rate increases, and option B aligns with the 40%, 10% rate increases. In those 2 columns, the only difference is in revenues. Everything else is the same. So all costs of contracting and energy costs and everything else are the same. There's one minor difference at the bottom, and that's about related to what's called non-operating income/expense. And that's because of a minor difference between interest expense that would change the amount that we'd have to draw down on a periodic basis. And therefore, the interest is slightly less in the option B category. This slide is just to point out to the board that that either one of these options would contribute 5% of revenues to the reserves per policy. The net position on option A is 24 million and option B is 33.3 million. And then the net following slide, thank you. The left column is the proposed budget, so that shows $24 million in option A and 33 million in option B. They're not significantly different in the outlook for the next 4 years, although as I mentioned, that's just giving the board an outlook for what we can expect to see happen. Lots of things will change between now and then, but the board is not approving those last 4 columns. It's just to give us a sense of where we think things will go based upon all the assumptions, including forward price curves that are out 60 months at this point, which even 1 month or 2 months or 12 months of trying to guess energy costs is a big guess. But they're based upon theoretically professional estimators and large companies that do this for a living. But in either case, both of these options would enable, assuming the contingency is adequate and all the other assumptions are reasonably close, both of these would allow the organization to get onto a solid financial standing and grow to a point where we could consider an external rating, investment grade rating, which would help purchases and negotiate better terms with suppliers. So I think the board is at this point has 2 decisions to make, although they're interrelated.
Very good. Are there questions for Greg or Andy? Come on, guys. Go ahead, Katie.
Thank you, Chair. I know folks in my community might ask this, but when it comes to programs, $600,000 might not be a lot for programs. And so are we anticipating that those funds will need to be matched with other grants and program funding?
The quick answer, Vice Chair, is that yes, we are actively seeking grant funding for different program opportunities. One is the Equitable Decarbonization, Building Decarbonization Grant Program. So we're working on that. So the answer is yes, we are always looking to leverage whatever funds we have with grant funding opportunities, both as an individual entity and, as a matter of fact, with SDCP, who is just, if I'm not mistaken, granted approval for the San Diego County Regional Energy Network, which is going to be an invaluable source of funding for the region for programs like this. So that was the long answer for the short answer, yes.
Where we could use this to match and go after more resources, bring them into CEA territories.
That's correct.
I know folks might also ask this. With that $600,000, what is our potential to reduce the burden to the ratepayers if we return these program funds to the ratepayers? Would that be significant for them?
I don't know how to answer that other than to say it probably would not be significant with that amount of money, but what we could do is consider, and we will be coming back to the board with a discussion about programs and how to utilize these funds. I'd also remind you that the JPA agreement allocates surplus revenues or these kinds of revenues based on load of each member agency. So we'll be coming back to you with a discussion about how to allocate these funds. But the answer is that yes, we could provide this. It could be provided in the form of a rebate to customers. How the board chooses to pursue that is up to the board. We could bring you some ideas and options of what that might look like, as well as what kind of funding in total it would take to provide that kind of relief to ratepayers.
Yeah, thank you for those options. My vision is that we're able to leverage our program funds to develop those programs that can reduce costs for ratepayers. That's the long game anyway. So I'm supportive of that item. And I'm thinking option 4, now that we've looked at that, I think it would be favorable for smoothing and I would be supportive of that.
Very good. Are there other questions for Andy or Greg? Kaylin, are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this?
We do not have any public speakers on this item.
Okay, so now we'll open it up for board discussion. There's two questions that we need to answer at this point. One is what the rate should be. And number two is any approval of the budget. So let's open it up with what is it, a people's opinion on the rates? We've heard from Katie, and we have another.
Would you like to see them in the context of bill impact? So this right here, go ahead and enlarge it. These are the two options comparatively, and these are just on the energy generation side of the bill. And so,
Can I ask a question about that slide?
yeah,
Is this comparing, what are the rates coming from? This is last year's rates, last year's
this
average
is
rates?
current rates. This is what we currently charge customers per month on average.
Okay,
And it's average, so it's annualized, so it blends in both summer and winter rates.
Greg,
a day
it's
rate,
not,
though.
it's not necessarily what we charge. It's on the distribution and generation
I'm
side.
sorry, this is total bill. I apologize. This is total bill. What I meant was, this is on the energy side, not the gas side. I'm sorry, because there was a chart that we showed. Thanks for that correction. This is not just delivery. This is the total bill, average, delivery and generation for electricity.
So
that
it assumes on the first line, the current monthly rates is the distribution charges that SDG&E charges customers today, plus our CEA rates that we charge for generation. And then the next two lines are a little higher because they include an option for us to raise our rates. And so, and then it's slightly, I don't know if it's misleading is the right way to say it, but by the time we raise rates in the winter, that'll be November. And SDG&E on January 1 theoretically is going to change their distribution rates too. So but that is not reflected because we don't know what that'll be. We've been told that they're not likely to change much, but that remains to be seen.
thank you. That's all I was asking for, is just a little under the hood about what fed those top numbers.
The other component of this is just an average rate. There are obviously people that are spending less and lots of people spending more, depending upon their.
And then keep in mind that the generation side on average over the course of the year is anywhere from, of this number, 25 to 35% of your bill.
Which we have no control over.
The other percentage, correct?
So are there comments on this? In terms of option 3 or option 4?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with option 4, and I'm grateful to Board Member Joyce for for bringing this up. I didn't know this was possible, so that was a good idea. I'm comfortable with it. I think that it's it's unfortunate that we have to raise our rates, but again, it's been 2 years, and so something we have to do, and a lot of good things will come with that. You said the investment rate, and of course, we'll be meeting our obligations. And I think this is really the way to go to help our residents and businesses for the smoothing effect that you talked about. So I'm comfortable with that. Option 4.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. In the conversation this morning, we talked about that roller coaster of rates between winter and summer. Like I said, when the bill comes, that's what you pay. But if there's a level of consistency that gets us to a better place and a little more predictability for our customers, I think it's a better way to go. And it actually benefits us on our bottom line too, which is nice. And that money can then be used for the ratepayers. So thank you.
Priya?
I'm comfortable with option 4 as well.
Eric?
Yeah, option 4 is my preference as well. I think, I just want to say, obviously none of us want to raise the rates. I hope that this is an option that can allow us to be stable for long enough that I think that the feeling is when you're purchasing anything nowadays, it feels like you're getting nickel and dimed every time. Like you're going, like they're always trying to take as much as possible. And so I hope that the stability that we can provide by doing this once and doing it in a way that is forward thinking allows us to not fall into that constant raising of the rates, and that we can explain this in a way that's both justifiable and speaking from a place of fact. So option 4 is my preference. Thank you.
Appreciate the comments. Andy, great job on this in terms of kind of threading this needle in terms of finding how to kind of smooth out the rates between winter and summer. I was pleasantly surprised to see the difference. There wasn't a much difference in terms of the total energy bill between winter and summer for most people, which is great. Option 4 seems to be the best option. Overall, it is giving people, it's raising our rates less. Not that it's significant, but it's better than nothing at this point. I would also comment that what's interesting is we are raising the rates. In the past, it's been San Diego Gas and Electric, which we have no representation to, and the PUC, which we have indirect participation, but ultimately we are the ones that get to decide the rates. And I think that's because we are the closest to the people. It's best that we be doing this rather than letting somebody else, some bureaucrat somewhere else do this. So I'm really happy that we're able to do this. Unfortunately, rates will change in the future. But eventually, as the market changes and we have more access to renewable energy, I don't know if anybody saw, but there huge geothermal installation is opening up in Utah soon. So we're going to see a huge change in that in the future as renewable rates, carbon-free rates come down. And we will be able to pass that savings down, especially as we don't have to pay for the obligations that San Diego Gas and Electric have done in the past. The obligations they have had to use to continue to make their old customers whole. So I noticed that Christian is here.
Yes,
Christian,
thank you. Thank you. I apologize for the late arrival. I emailed you all and I do apologize. Please excuse my delay.
But you came on perfect timing. You're going to determine whether or not we're going to go with option 3 or option 4.
Thank you.
Do you have that information in front of you?
Yes, I do. Yes. And I reviewed it already. And I definitely would advocate for option 4 after seeing the information, but I want to hear from my colleagues.
All of us have chimed in and all of us agree that option 4 is correct.
All right. So I'm good. I'm glad to know that I'm with the smart group. All right. Appreciate it.
That's that's making an assumption here.
Yeah. Well, I'm just glad to be part of the crowd. So thank you.
Yeah, great. So next, we have to adopt a budget. Are there any comments on the proposed budget? The assumption right now is that it will be option B, which was to use the rates in option 4. So comments on that?
No, that is the what I would propose as well, option B.
Are there comments from other board members?
I think they're fairly complementary. So one gets us where we need to be with the other one. And I think it's much easier to track our expenditures and inflow.
Very good. Any other comments? So we have a few resolutions that we have to approve. So do I have resolution to approve setting the rates and adopting the fiscal year 24-25 budget.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay. Do we need to be any more specific about this at this point?
I would just specify that Resolution 2024-009 sets the rate at option 4, and that Resolution 2024-010 adopts the fiscal year budget 2024-25 based on rate change option number 4.
I'm sure the maker of the motion and the seconder agrees with that.
Yes, I'd adopt that language for the motion.
Okay, so with that, Kaylin, will you call the roll?
Board Member Becker,
Yes.
Grove,
Aye.
Board Member Bhat Patel,
Aye.
Board Member Garcia,
Yes.
Alternate Board Member Joyce,
Aye.
Vice Chair Melendez,
Aye.
Chair Druker.
Yes. Great. Thank you very much for working on this and appreciate all the hard work on this.
And if I may just add real quickly, I do appreciate, I appreciate everyone taking our concerns into consideration in order to provide a new proposal. I know that was a lot of work, so I just want to thank you for that.
Very good. Next, we're on to our regulatory update. Keys and Fox. Yes, Tim is on remotely today. Tim, you're up.
Thank you very much, Chair Druker. Kaylin, it says my video cannot start because the host has stopped it. So I'll
Okay,
get
just
started.
one moment, please.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, Chair Druker, Vice Chair Melendez, members. It's nice to see you all again, even if you cannot see me currently. Thank you for allowing me to appear virtually. I'll be back in person with you all here in July. Next slide, please, Kaylin, when you have a chance. Thank you. So our update this month will be relatively short, kind of a slow news month, but we're going to dig into GHG-free attribute allocations from Diablo Canyon, which have the potential to green Clean Energy Alliance's energy mix. And then we'll touch quickly on 2 cases that will affect the PCIA rates, the power charge indifference adjustment rates. Next slide, please. There we go. Thanks, Kaylin. On the GHG-free allocations, the decision that established the continued operation of Diablo Canyon said that, look, if your customers are paying for extended operations, you should receive the benefit of those operations. And one benefit from the operation of a nuclear power plant is the fact that it is a GHG-free resource. It doesn't emit carbon when it operates. Similar to a renewable energy resource, what you can do with a GHG-free resource is you can separate that GHG-free attribute from the energy that the resource produces itself. And then you can sell that attribute or convey that attribute or transact that attribute separately from the energy. So it can be conveyed separately from the energy itself. How that would impact CEA's energy mix is you would reduce the carbon intensity of your mix by opting to take the attributes from the power plant. So your energy mix would be greener without you having to procure any additional GHG-free resources or purchasing GHG-free attributes. Now, this is an option. You do not have to take these attributes from Diablo Canyon. I know some load-serving entities would prefer not to take attributes associated with nuclear power. So this is not something you have to do, but allocations are going to begin in January 2025. Next slide, please. The reason I'm raising this is because PG&E filed an advice letter at the commission discussing the process through which these attributes would be conveyed to you or other LSCs that opt to take them. Essentially, before the end of the year, PG&E is going to offer these attributes to load-serving entities. If you opt to take them, you would enter into a sales agreement with PG&E. Obviously, there would be no price to those because your customers are already paying for the operation. So these are conveyed to you automatically once you opt in. There is a little bit of implementation issue with regard to direct access, electric service provider customers. So there's a little bit more bureaucratic process that needs to happen here in order to get this process set in stone. But I don't anticipate it's going to be overly controversial. So the bottom line here is that probably in Q3, maybe early Q4, you'll have the option and a choice to make regarding whether you want to take these GHG-free allocations from Diablo Canyon or not. All right, thank you, Kaylin. The other two cases I want to touch on, again, affect PCIA rates. I talked about the 2025 SDG&E era forecast case during last month's meeting. We did indeed file a protest on June 17th to that application. We opposed the utilities proposal to cap the value of RA capacity. That would have purposefully undervalued SDG&E's capacity, thereby increasing the PCIA rates for you all. We submitted a protest that opposed that proposal and other issues on both substantive and procedural grounds. We argued that you shouldn't be making policy in an expedited proceeding like this proceeding is. We argued SDG&E hasn't provided enough details on this proposal. And on substance, we said, look, this isn't needed to mitigate rates for bundled customers because other components of the PCIA formula are actually moving in the opposite direction. And that, our experience with caps in PCIA land has been that they actually increase volatility. They don't reduce rate volatility. So we received SDG&E's reply to our protest earlier today. Haven't had a chance to take a look at that. After that, we'll have a pre-hearing conference with the judge, and then we'll proceed with testimony, possibly hearings, briefing, and we anticipate a decision here by the end of the year. As Greg said earlier, these error rates are likely to change significantly over the course of this year, and we'll keep you updated as we see different numbers come in, especially in October. Oops, sorry. Can you go back one more, please? So that's the error forecast case. On the error compliance case, where forecast looks to 2025, compliance looks backwards to 2023. It provides an audit-like review of SDG&E's individual procurement transactions and actual resource performance during the record year, which in this case is 2023. That was filed on June 1st. That case gives us a chance to make sure that generation costs were put into the right buckets in 2023 and to ensure that your customers didn't overpay their PCIA rates in that year. That one just got started, so we'll have a responsive pleading to that due on July 5th. And then again, testimony, possibly hearings, briefing, and then a decision on this one is probably not going to come until mid-year next year. Thanks, Kaylin. Last slide. Any questions for me?
Very good. Thank you very much, Tim. Questions for Tim? Tim, one question. If it turns out that SDG&E overcharged us in 2023, it sounds like we would know that in 2025. What happens?
Essentially, then, sometimes, for example, Chair Drucker will catch a mistake. Like accidentally a resource was put into this bucket, it should have been put into that bucket. In that case, SDG&E will typically agree with us when we point it out for them. They can make those adjustments in real time. Sometimes even in response to discovery, they'll say, we got, you're correct, and we have made an adjustment now. And so that will adjust the rates in this year, and you'll see that impact as soon as 2025. In other cases, they'll disagree with us, and then we have to wait until the commission makes a decision. And then if the decision agrees that, for example, a mistake was made, we wouldn't see the impact of that rate until after that decision comes. So that in that case, you probably wouldn't see rates change until 2026.
Very good. Are there other questions for Tim?
A quick one.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tim. A quick question though with Diablo. If I recall correctly, last year, the cost of keeping it running was to be borne by the agencies using the power. Is that a fair assessment? It was going to be spread out?
Yes.
Okay, so if we choose not to accept the power, are we still obligated to pay our fair share for the cost of running the facility?
Yes,
Okay, so we either pay for it and use it or pay for it and don't use it, is what it comes down to.
that's right.
Okay, thank you.
The other end of that is if we pay for it, we don't have to use it, but we get the credit.
Right.
Go ahead, Christie.
I have a question back on the PCIA charges.
Mhm.
Have you been involved where some city or entity is getting near the end of those PCIA charges? And I'm hopeful Solana Beach one day will be. And how do when does that happen? And how do we get to see there shouldn't be that much left? I mean, I just don't understand how we don't get to see how many more contracts are left so that everybody could get an idea of when that part of the costs are gone.
Right. So the duration of the PCIA depends on what resources are PCIA eligible for utility-owned generation. So that's the stuff that Sempra owns. It's the end of the asset's useful life, which is, an accounting exercise. And then for contracted for resources, it's at the end of the contract. You'll recall this is actually an issue that we're looking at in SDG&E's phase 1 rate case, where they would like to add storage to an existing power plant. And our argument has been, well, if you're adding storage to an existing power plant, that's not something that our customers should be on the hook for. And so that wouldn't be something that's added into our PCIA. We do have our arms around all of the PCIA eligible resources. And we could put together for the board, if it would like, a report on currently when we would expect those to roll off of the PCIA and not be something for which customers in different vintages would be responsible for. It's something we can look at right now. The last thing I'll say is this is an ongoing question at the commission, really trying to nail the commission down and get the commission to opine on the fact that there are no forever PCIA resources and to establish the points at which those resources are going to roll out of each customer's PCIA.
Very good. I'm happy to have you on this. And just keep reminding us because I can't remember all those other cases, but yeah, thank you for updating me on that.
Sure, thank you.
Other questions?
So Tim, did I understand you? You're not able to break it down by vintage, but just in general, the obligation to CEA
Oh, we can. Yeah, absolutely. We could provide that for you if you'd like.
by vintage?
Sure.
That
Yes.
would be extremely helpful, I think, to all the constituent agencies.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? Sounds like we have a future agenda item, which is our next item, which is future agenda items. Tim, really appreciate all the work on here that you're doing, keeping the PUC honest with us and also just ultimately working to ensure our ratepayers are paying the correct rates. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
So next item is future agenda items, and I think we do have one, Greg, right? Which is,
Well, we have the item that you just mentioned.
Yes,
To bring the
exactly.
PCIA information forward for each member agency.
What about making the choice whether or not we take the GHG free allocation or not? Should we get that on
That
record?
can also, I appreciate that suggestion, Director Becker, because we did last year, there was an option to take some of that. It was a small amount, but we did because we were paying for it. And the board may want to weigh in and decide whether that should be something that we continue to do if given that opportunity to enhance that 75% element, the 25% GHG free part of our portfolio.
I think the value would be in knowing the relative value of that energy on a market rate
Right.
as opposed to the credit rate we would get.
Correct.
Compare that and do what's best for our constituents. Thank
We
you.
can put that on a future agenda as well.
other items that anybody would like to see?
Yes, this is Christian Garcia. I was hoping to get something else. Speaking of the PCIA, I was speaking with our citizen advisor And something that we want to see if we could consider is, because Escondido, and this is something that I've spoken about in the past, Escondido has the lowest median income, yet we're paying the highest PCIA. I want to see if it's possible to do a study about giving our Escondido residents a credit for our PCIA to offset the difference between what we're paying here and what the average is, or what the lowest amount of other cities are paying. So I want to see if we could do, if we could do some kind of credit for the residents of Escondido. Credit rebate.
Greg?
If directed by the board, we can certainly do that. I think the way we would couch it is in light of our JPA agreement and how we allocate some of those resources, we could come back and provide some options to consider about how that could be achieved.
And I guess the other portion of that is the $600,000 that's sitting in programs.
Correct. We would provide the report in light of that just approved program budget, as well as what might be necessary to achieve what it is that Mr. Garcia is asking.
Go ahead, Eric.
Would this be a requested rebate to all Escondido residents or just residents that qualify under low income? I know that we have.
It would be for any residents who are paying the high level PCIA. I don't have the exact number, but I believe the Escondido residents are paying about $730, which is our PCIA, which is the highest amount within this group.
San Marcos.
Yeah, same with San Marcos.
Yeah, so I'm sure we will have a robust discussion about this. We're not going to discuss it today, but we're going to bring this back at an appropriate time. It's going to be an extremely, as I said, robust discussion. It's not going to be a simple, boy, yes, no on this. So look forward to that. Other items that anybody would like to see on future agenda? Okay, our next meeting is July 25th, 2024 in this room. And I hope everybody has a great 4th of July. Thank you.
Thank you all.
There goes your 600,000, Katie.